Looks like everyone's trickling in.
Yes, we'll just give it a few minutes to let people log on. All right. Well, welcome. This is the listening session for the Citywide Community Flood Resilience Plan. And I'm just going to start sharing my screen. Trying to have too many screens. Give me a second. Okay. So I think we'll get started. So first of all, I just want to thank everyone for your attendance tonight and using your evening to join us. We appreciate it. My name is Alexis Carachetti. I am the Senior Environmental Officer and the Assistant Director of Planning and Zoning for the City of Norwalk, and I'm here tonight with Michelle Andreski, Senior Planner with the City of Norwalk's Planning and Zoning Office. So to back up, the city received a competitive grant through the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation, which goes by the acronym NIFWIF. They have a funding source called the National Coastal Resilience Fund, and that's what we received funding, who we received funding from to complete a citywide flood resilience plan. And tonight's listening session is the first of a multiple opportunities for the public to give input on the plan. The development of the plan is a 12-month project that will need to conclude in early October of this year in 2026. And the outcome of the project is a broad, a citywide plan that clearly articulates the flooding risks faced by Norwalk and provides a prioritized toolkit of strategies to help increase resilience or strategies that decrease flood impacts and flood risks. As you are all, I'm sure, aware, Norwalk is a coastal community. We have major river systems, we have aging infrastructure, and that all means that Norwalk will have future flood events. My goal for this plan is that this plan will guide the city's decisions regarding the expenditure of time, effort, and finances on strategies that will best reduce the risks that are associated with flooding. Let me just take a step back and go over real quickly the agenda for tonight and kind of the format for the session tonight. It's intentionally very short. Here's the agenda. There are 3 items, and that's because the main purpose is that we want to hear from you. So I'm going to start by just going over a little bit more details about the project, giving a project overview, mostly so that we are all on the same page and understand the confines and the structure and the goals of the project and the plan. And then we'll move into early findings and mapping. And in that portion, we have 3 specific questions that we want to ask you, and we would really appreciate your feedback on. And then at the very end, I'll describe the next steps and also the mechanisms that we have set up to capture all of your comments and your concerns beyond just tonight. And then we'll review, at the very end, we'll have time to have kind of an open mic and listen to any additional comments that you may have if you don't get a chance to say them all in that section 2. So, quick project overview. There are three encompassing outcomes of the plan. So, one is to reduce flood risk or reduce the impact of flooding has on our community to increase resiliency, right? Two is to strengthen natural systems. And when we talk about natural systems, we're talking about employing natural ecosystems and ecosystems associated processes in ways that allow them to address challenges like climate change and flooding, where they provide some sort of human benefit. So examples are wetlands, oyster reefs, salt marshes, riparian buffers. Um, it also includes integrating natural areas into city designs. And it can also include engineered systems that mimic natural resources. So things like permeable pavement, green roofs, bioswales. And then the third major outcome of the plan is guided, coordinated investment. So how does a community pay for the things in the plan? How do we keep Norwalk a competitive contender for grant funding to get things implemented? And so these are the project goals. I'll just kind of read through these real quickly. So there's 5 kind of project goals. The first is to articulate the risk. How do we remove flooding reaction from an in the moment reaction towards taking steps to kind of plan for flooding? Number 2 looks to prioritize strategies. 3, to review policies and the built environment. 4, going back to those specific actions and specific projects that will reduce flood impacts, and set up a project pipeline where we go from idea, concept to design to implementation. And then lastly, to engage and then support populations that are most vulnerable to the impacts of flooding. So understanding that flooding impacts populations differently, and more vulnerable populations are in turn exposed to more risk and are therefore more impacted. So what this plan will do, there are 3 phases to this plan. We're currently in phase number 1. And the first phase is really understanding the existing risks and impacts, the where, the how, the whys. And we will be transitioning into phase 2 as our consultant, who is AECOM, who I should have said earlier. That was my pause in thinking. The city has retained AECOM as our environmental planning consultant to assist the city in undertaking this plan. So they will be doing the bulk of the work, and Michelle and I are here to support them and to really interact with you and do the public engagement side. So AECOM produced these slides, and so thank you. So then phase 2, our consultant AECOM is going to take all this information that we're going to start gathering tonight and start to identify opportunities and strategies to increase resilience. We plan to initially test those ideas by coming back to you, the public, with an in-person public workshop at the end of April, where we'll solicit feedback on these initial strategies that AECOM has come up with. And we'll talk more about that upcoming event at the end. And then lastly, phase 3 is going to be in the summer. It's going to focus on kind of refining the actions that have been identified in the draft plan and making sure that they really fit for Norwalk. So, like I said, our consultant AECOM has gathered and reviewed existing data and plans. The POCD, the Norwalk Citywide Plan, was done in 2019. They were the consultant actually hired by Circa to do the South Norwalk Resiliency Plan. They're also looking at the Regional Hazard Mitigation Plan and most recently the Industrial Land Use Plan that the city undertook. And with all this, they're starting to piece together a picture of Norwalk's existing risks and assets. Oops, sorry. So I'm going to move into agenda item 2, which is early findings and mapping. And so we'll get down to looking at what AECOM has started to organize and structure their initial findings. And so this graphic shows their mapping typologies, which you can kind of think of typologies more as buckets that organize things into similar and related characteristics. And so these are the buckets that AECOM is using to collect information so that they can map out flood risks and impacts and start to make geographic connections. And in a few minutes, we're going to return to these 3 buckets to ask you for input regarding each bucket. And so the first, obviously, we're focused on flood exposure. And this is all the information that they're using to map flood-prone areas. So there's your FEMA maps, there's mapping regarding storm surge and topography and the lay of the land. The other bucket is mobility and infrastructure. And so they are starting to understand the location of Norwalk's transportation corridors, land use, and where critical services are. And then lastly, they're mapping out natural resources. Natural resources includes both where natural resources are present and where natural resources are lacking. So examples are urban forest corridors, wetlands, estuaries, places that might be lacking some natural resource, and the buffering that they provide include places with higher exposure to heat, paved surfaces, and natural resources also includes parks. So here is a aerial photograph. This credit should be given to Patrick Sykes of Hearst Media for this drone shot of Vets Park. So Norwalk is lucky in that it has a lot of parks, and yes, this is a photo of a flooded park, but it can also be looked at as a flood management asset rather. I had mentioned kind of a project timeline earlier, and that's where a grant funder that is invested in a part of a project has an interest in further investment to see a project be completed. The city and its partner, the Maritime Aquarium, we've already received 2 grants from NIFWIF, the same grant umbrella that's funding this project, to study Vets Park and its flood resilience. So one of the goals of this plan is to provide additional support for these project pipelines for flood resilience throughout the city. So this is just a quick slide to kind of parcel out all of the drivers of flooding that impact Norwalk. Flooding drivers are not necessarily simple or linear, and this is kind of one of our busier slides. This slide basically explains why the city needs the assistance of an environmental planning firm to help really drill into what are the flood drivers and come up with strategies that are going to work, that are appropriate. And so, like I said, we're a coastal community. So these are the coastal drivers. We have rivers, which is the riverine drivers, and then urban drainage constraints. That's where our infrastructure that conveys stormwater doesn't quite have the capacity to deal with whatever is being thrown at it. So just some terminology. Chronic flooding. There's a variety of different types of flooding. So chronic flooding is also called sunny day flooding or nuisance flooding. And you'll see that repeated on this slide. Sunny day flood, chronic flooding includes stuff like high tides or minor storms. This is the kind of flooding that is absolutely disruptive, but it's not catastrophic, right? Episodic flooding is less frequent than chronic flooding. Hopefully, it is rare, but it is driven by these high intensity events. So think hurricanes, Superstorm Sandy, um, high precipitation events. And then ongoing is kind of always contributing to flooding, the lay of the land, if you will. So we're going to
Right.
return to our buckets, and I'm going to switch over to Michelle for a minute.
Thanks. So as Alexis had mentioned, a portion of this study will focus on flood exposure. Here you are looking at a map of Norwalk with two particular sections identified. You can see circle A is showing a part of the 5 Mile River, illustrating how heavy rain upstream can raise river levels, while narrow river corridors in developments increases the flood risks. One of these risks can be water topping over dams, and this can cause a surge of water downstream. Then in circle B, showing an inlet west of the Harborview neighborhood. This is an example of how the shape of the coastline can trap stormwater in coves and inlets, causing deeper, longer lasting flooding. So looking at these natural shapes and topography of the coast is important to take into account when trying to mitigate where flooding occurs. Then if you look to the right of the map of Norwalk, you'll see several items called out that are important attributes to observe flood exposure. And this includes delineated wetlands that support flood attenuation. Flood hazard area is the projected area that has 1% or higher chance of flooding. Then you have the overlaying transportation corridors layer to see where those corridors may be at risk to these attributes of flood exposure. And then hurricane surge risk is predicted inundation from hurricanes based on landfall, location, and speed. And then you have properties that are at the highest flood risk that basically surround the coastline. Next slide. So now we get into a more exciting part, listening to you all. So this question in the past 2 years, or perhaps when you might last recall a big event that impacted you, how have you experienced that flooding in Norwalk directly? So at this time, if you want to raise your hand, and we'll bring you over to speak. We don't have any time limit or anything. And then I don't see anybody dialed in on a phone, but if you are, it is *9 to raise your hand. We have Elmer. You just have to unmute yourself.
Hi.
Hello.
So I'm speaking for, I want to say about 12 homes in my neighborhood. We're off of right close to West Norwalk, off of Scribner. My property abuts Merwin Pond. I know a couple of my neighbors are on the call as well. And I just to be frank with you guys, we've experienced over 12 inches of water inside about five of these homes in the last 2 years in a row. There was some mitigation done a little bit downstream from us, but no further improvement or no city activity as to what else can be done. And there's actually a viable solution that I wanted to bring forward, and recommend.
Okay.
So
That would be great. And can I just ask how frequently do you experience flooding? Like, is it during um, relatively modest rain events or
so it can accumulate, and then
okay.
let me verb that this way. We have a condominium complex that is huge above our property upstream from us. There's a lot of blacktop there, and their rush of water comes right under Scribner, sometimes even a little bit over Scribner, and you'll see it come over into our properties. And it rushes these 6 homes that abut this small stream attached to Merwin Pond. Um, there's a crumbling wall that's holding up this small stream that looks like it was made in the 20s. Nothing has been done from that. From when I spoke to someone in the city, they came out to see the site and told me that those walls pertain to each one of the property owners, but we don't have access to it. Everyone's property has been subdivided out and they all have fences abutting this property. So what happens is the water makes its way over. I mean, every summer, my neighbor next door who just purchased this home has a lake in his backyard, basically. Like his dogs can't go out. He's got water that he's got to pump out. We both have, multiple pumps just to get water out of our homes. And, we're not in a FEMA flood zone, thankfully. So we're not doing that. But then the water mitigation plan has been pretty much radio silent from the city. And, I wanted to take the opportunity to speak to you all fine people, since we're looking at this as a citywide project to propose, the dredging of Merwin Pond and or, some sort of solution that's going to help these properties deal with flooding, because it's really left to the homeowners every single time that this happens to not only pump the water out of their systems, but also,
Mhm.
deal with the water itself and the damages that come from it. No homeowners insurance is covering it because they consider it groundwater. So it's really frustrating to pay taxes in the city and to just hear radio silence from City Hall when it comes to our flooding problems.
It's considered groundwater. I think I can hear the peepers in the background when
Yeah,
you
actually,
speak.
so one of the beautiful things about having a pond, and shout out to my neighbor who went out there, dredged it, and he kind of deviated some of the water to come into the property, which is kind of what I'm asking the city to do, really, is to come in here and really, if they can and have the manpower, to dredge and help us really mitigate some of the water for our neighborhood. I can't vouch for what you guys are dealing with upstream, but I'll tell you like this is going to sound crazy. We live off of Connecticut Avenue and I've had fish in my backyard. So something's going on, and I really wish the city could come over and kind of pay attention and give this entire neighborhood of, new Norwalk residents. We've got about 6 homes that have sold in this area. And, we all looked at each other one day, knee deep in water in the middle of our small circle on Kelly Court, and there's nowhere to put it. So it's just like, all right, wait till the levels drop, because it's this waterway is directly affected by the tide. So when the tide is high, I could see this small little stream raise up above want to say 3.5 to 4 feet, and you're just looking over your yard and looking over your fence to see, all right, when is this thing going to start spilling over, and what barriers, well, do I have to buy sandbags this afternoon, like what am I doing? And I just really want to include my neighborhood in this plan in any way, shape, or form, and kind of would love some replies back as to what can be done.
Okay, thank you. I mean,
All right.
at this point, we're just taking in information, but we will definitely
Oh, sweet, thank you,
add
toss
it
them over,
to the
bud.
plan. All right.
Yeah, so it's the Merwin Pond area and Scribner Avenue, Donna Drive, Kelly Court, Kelly Drive.
Got it.
Okay, thank you.
Of course.
All right. The next hand I see up is Thomas Scallion. You just have to unmute, Thomas.
Sorry, I had to get an upgrade to my Zoom, and I'm still fussing with the controls. I live at Irish Court, right off Flax Hill Road, and we have Keeler Brook behind our homes here. I guess my house is probably less than 100 feet away from the brook, but we are in a FEMA zone. It was redesignated some years ago. We moved here in 1998. But in 2021, we had, I guess it was hurricane, I think it was Ida, or probably it was a tropical storm. And for the first time ever, the brook overflowed, and we got about 6 inches in our split level home. Prior to that, we had it was another bad storm about a few months before that, and our garage was flooded, but not the house. And what Ida was so bad that where Rowayton Avenue is, where the graveyard is, it actually lifted the road, the bridge up over the road. It cracked it, and I think they just fixed that about maybe 2 years ago, 3 years ago, and it looks like they did widen it. So I think it could accommodate more of the rainfall. Since these storms have been getting worse and worse, we haven't had any problems lately. But normally, in a bad rain, the brook will really rush very quickly. It goes into 5 Mile River, and uh, I heard they were thinking about dredging it, but I've been saying that for years. Dredging it by, I think, where the mouth of the 5 Mile River is, perhaps allow more water to come through. I think the brook originates behind St. Matthew's Church. I believe there are two ponds there. But that was the worst flooding we had. We went all those years without it, but with the recent storms here, they had built my house another 100 feet away. I think I went out of the flood zone. So I'm just hoping that the city will still, keep a watch on that brook, and hopefully, they'll, you know, um, make any measures to maybe make the brook a little less prone to overflowing when there's a bad storm.
Okay, thank you.
The
Thank
next
you.
hand, thank you. Next hand, Linnell Jones.
Thank you. Flooding is a serious and life-threatening problem in my neighborhood, Wilson Point, a peninsula whose entrance is off Route 136, next to but not part of Rowayton. Unfortunately, there was no notice about this meeting in my neighborhood, approximately 80 private homes, despite 5 emails from our president last week. The very individual who made the motion and argument at the Harbor Commission meeting to approve the new residences at 108 Water Street. Many are not concerned with flooding, which is why I have shared the photos I have. When it floods, all Wilson Point waterfront homes and the private waterfront club, the Wilson Point Beach Club's septic systems are underwater, a water quality pollution control concern for everyone on Norwalk. Our inland and tidal wetlands are on city maps. All Wilson Point property is private. We maintain our own roads and drainage. Photos of flooding on Wilson Point are included in a 2023 presentation made for Circa and ACOM when they first came uninvited to Norwalk. That presentation of photos of flooding was shared with Michelle, and I thank you, Michelle, for sharing it with the public. Flooding is a problem in my neighborhood, as the photos show. It's a problem on State Road 136, which we are told Norwalk can do nothing about. Also shared with Michelle was the August 27, 2025 letter from the director of the Land Water Resources Division at DEEP, because it includes many photos from the Norwalk Police and various news agencies showing how dangerous Water Street, aptly named, is during a flood. These photos prove no emergency vehicle can pass, and there are also police videos showing how fast the water moves. The 20-page letter explains why DEEP found the residential aspect of the 108 Water Street proposal inconsistent with the Connecticut Coastal Management Act, no dry egress. So, against the law? DEEP recommended Norwalk deny the 108 Water Street proposal. Thank you for making this letter public in connection with this meeting and this study by ACOM. We all know P&Z approved the 108 Water Street project, including residences, ignoring DEEP and the Connecticut Coastal Management Act. And last week, the applicant doubled down, changing commercial to a hotel and a restaurant, increasing the residential risk. Deep has sued Norwalk before, and there's also been that legally negotiated 50 million consent decree with Deep. But who knows if Deep will take any action, especially since Deep's August 2025 letter, the proposal changed commercial to a hotel, putting more lives at risk, doubling down. What can happen? Always someone else's responsibility. Yet, no matter the warning or responsibility or timing, everyone will be headed out at the same time, even those without transportation, all along with all the new neighbors in the new density, all on a 2-lane road. Any false warnings will only result in people ignoring warnings. Yet Norwalk made the decision to ignore Deep and approved the 108 Water Street proposal. Is that why ACOM is here? Is this some kind of deal? We will not sue you for putting lives at risk, violating the Connecticut Coastal Management Act. You can develop to your heart's delight, sell your waterfront to the highest bidder, but you need to show the public you care. You need to create a flood plan for optics. Has ACON been shown what our consultant, the expensive strategic harbor consultant, Indigo Blue, concluded? Thank you.
Thank you. Um, Ms. Jones, I don't see any other additional hands up. Oh, I see another one. Diane Cece?
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thanks. I'm not sure how many folks from the community joined on here. I would always kind of like to go near the end because I always take a great interest in what other folks have to say as well. But I wanted to hop on. First of all, I agree with everything Lynell Jones just said as well. The community at large really shares a great concern over the impact of development on the city. One of which is the impact of increased flooding and where we're building, et cetera. And I can tell you here in East Norwalk, we've also had our own tremendous disappointments with the relationship between Deep and the city, and Deep's role in what the city sometimes portrays as advisory, and yet we see it as regulatory. And nonetheless, Deep issues a statement about something, shouldn't be done or it wouldn't be smart to do it. And then planning and zoning basically says, okay, but we're going to do it anyway. And I think that's, adding to this issue. But I wanted to talk to, first of all, I'm a 40-year flood victim. So I don't know if there's a limit. I saw something that said, have you flooded in the past 2 years? I'm knocking on my wood head as I say that we have not, but I have a long history of flooding. And one of the organized groups decade or two ago that actually brought flooding to a to an important head in the city and in areas that and this is a point I want to make. There are many areas in this city that flood that are nowhere near water, and where I live on Olmsted is one of them, and sections along this part of East Norwalk as well. I was curious in one of the slides that you had up where you listed for this consultant study, there was a list of or circles of typology. Are you able to bring that back up for a second?
Sure.
I wanted to make a point on that, and I don't know if I can without seeing it. Oh, okay. Yes, this was my point. So with the exception of the third one, natural resources, it seems to me that flood exposure and all the categories under mobility and infrastructure, I just have a strong wave come over me of deja vu. And I just have to say, as being a 40-year flood victim, some of these components and the things that ACOM is going to look at have been looked at ad nauseum. My own records go back starting to 2003, but I know in 2005, and I'm talking about studies and DPW and consultants, Ty and Bond was one of them on at least one occasion. I think Woodward and Curran was another that had another segment of it or a portion of the city. But 2005, 2008, 2011, 2013, 2018, these are dates that all I have in reference to the city looking to address flooding. And some of those dates resulted in expensive engineers and consultants being hired to study things and come out with studies and recommendations. So one of the questions I have under this new venture is what happened to all of that information in those studies, and are we recreating the wheel? Is ACOM going to go back and incorporate those? And how much of the recommendations that were in there are actually being followed today? I know at one point, it got to the point where the city finally gave in and designated, I think it was like 11 to 13 areas that they designated as flood prone or known to flood, many by the water, but also a bunch that weren't. And we also finally got the city to take a look at flooding in the same manner that they do snowstorms, so that there's more preparation where they know that areas are prone to flooding, where they can prepare. They can come out and they can do some maintenance for the storm drains. They can, monitor water levels and, whatever other mitigation efforts they have. And so I think, being proactive with it is important, especially for areas that the flooding literally has nothing to do with being near the water. In our case, much of the flooding had to do with just poor maintenance of the system and overloading of the storm drain systems, because they're all stormwater system is tied in between stormwater and sewer still in many, many parts of the city. And, every time we're told by the city that they're working on remedying that, I don't see it happening. And I don't know if it's just that they don't have maybe the political will to actually work with homeowners to fix some of that. In our case, over here on Olmsted, even though there was new piping that was put in, the real cause, the culprit of the flooding here was the poor maintenance of the system. And subsequent flooding, we know, happens in the city when the city systems aren't maintained. When they're maintained, we can sustain incredible amounts of rain in a short period of time. And when they're not maintained, many areas that you guys don't think about as flooding areas will actually flood. And I hope that's taken into account as part of what they're looking at. But again, my concern is kind of this deja vu feeling. Are we recreating the wheel now? What's different that we're looking at now? And also, I want to make sure that we're not kind of brushing over the impact of development here. It's one thing to say that when things come through planning and zoning, and I know Michelle can speak to this better, but when they come through, there's now stormwater management, there's planning and zoning guidelines that encourage reduction of impervious surfaces. But I'm not sure that that's, really cutting it. We need to really take a better look at the type of development that's going in and where these are located, especially here right alongside the Mill Pond, and now unbelievably approved, what Miss Jones is just talking about, 108 Water Street. So anyway, those were my points. I can add, like I said, 40 years worth of knowledge of flooding, and I happen to have taken an interest in a lot of the other areas in the city because, maybe misery loves company, but at one point, almost everybody in the city who's been impacted, either coastal or from the city's infrastructure, has, tried to work together to solve this, and through 5 or 6 DPW directors and at least several mayors. And I hope we can make some headway in addressing how we manage the city to reduce it. Thanks.
Thanks, Diane. I want to get back to other public comment, but I'll just say that I think that the difference with this plan is that the consultant is looking at those previous plans. These are just some of them, and we have sent them everything that we can think of. If you have specific recollection of plans that you think they should also have, I know that you have my email, Diane. if you want to email me directly specific um, plans or studies that you are recollecting, I can make sure that they have those. And then I think the difference is that they are taking all of those. They're taking the public comments tonight, and they're really tying these three together. So it's not just that it's looking at where flooding is or looking at where there are issues with transportation corridors or just looking at natural resources. They're trying to find places of intersection between the three and using natural resources to kind of lessen flood exposure impacts on transportation systems and infrastructure. So I think they're taking all those things and they're trying to come up with strategies based on that, like you said, that 40 years of study. So, but thank you for your comments.
Thanks, Alexa. That's a super important point. I really appreciate that, because one of the things too I just want to add on to this is that I think everybody needs to be guarded against fixing, have a solution in one place that actually shifts it to another. And I know over here, one of the things that happened with Fitch Pond is when all that work was done was the very first year that almost deadly flooding on I-95 started to happen at exit 16. In all the years we lived here, we hadn't seen that. And there's no doubt in our mind there was a direct correlation. So no one I'm sure is looking to fix specific areas and then create a problem somewhere else, for sure. Thank you, guys.
Absolutely.
So it looks like we have one last hand. I know we kind of are getting a little stalled because we do have the rest of the presentation to get through. But let's bring over Diane quickly, hopefully. You just have to unmute, Diane.
Yes, hi. Can you hear me? Oh, thank you.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes, I wanted to say I've been listening to much of this presentation. I'm glad we're having this event, and hopefully the rest of them will be more widely announced, especially through our city council. I would really like to see the district and at-large city council people help you spread the word, because we know flooding risk has happened throughout. I apologize if I did not catch the beginning of this forum, and I will look at the recording. But the premise of the question you're posing to us today of the 2 years, I find that it might really I don't understand why only 2 years would be something that you're asking people, because you have still, even though it's hard to afford to stay in Norwalk, there are many, many families and people that have been in Norwalk. I would have preferred that this question, and I'm asking that you think about it for the next public event, and that is take it back at least to the last major storm we've had, because in 2 years we have not had major storms. We've had flooding, but I think it's missing a lot of opportunity to help guide the staff and consultants. I will just say also that I also wanted to make sure that one of the goals is to find out where the city can increase its green infrastructure opportunities. I remember asking this of Vanessa Valadares' predecessor as they were doing flooding in an area I used to live at, which is in the Cranberry section, a lot of flooding. And they did not include looking at green infrastructure. They looked at the traditional engineering way of using pipes and dredging and installing new storm drains, all important, but without including that factor of green infrastructure up front, front loaded. I think that we will cause not only more expense than we need to our taxpayers and the city, but also we will have more flooding. And I wanted to make sure that this consultant is being directed to look at nature-based solutions to flooding, not the traditional engineering way. Green infrastructure has been on my lips for over a decade in this city, and I know a lot of the staff use that phrase, but I don't always see it included in city flooding planning, including who we hire to do stormwater management through engineering. So, lastly, I now live in West Norwalk. And even though the 5 Mile River has not flooded as badly as it did back with Hurricane Sandy, I do think it would be very important to make sure you look at um, that issue as well. I'm not saying we go back to the 55 flood before even I was born, but I do think we've had some major floods that if you're just putting up this slide I see the past 2 years, I think you're going to miss a lot of very good input. I helped with the updates for the 5 Mile River plan, but it hasn't been updated in many years. I know that Ms. Cherchetti touches upon that when it happens. Currently, the Norwalk River Plan, of which I was one of the original members, has been updated a few times and is going through updates. But I want to make sure that we include more people. I want the net to be wider. So thank you for letting me speak, and I look forward to seeing the next event.
Thanks. All right. So now we'll jump into the next bucket, which is looking at mobility and infrastructure of the city. This is focusing on transportation systems, movement of people within the city, and then by infrastructure, we're meaning our built networks and services that we have. So this slide is showing a call out part of South Norwalk where there is a mix of land uses within a flood hazard area that intersects with major corridors, bridge crossings, and evacuation routes, that those can be impacted and strained during flood events. And then even if moderate flooding does occur, it can isolate neighborhoods and make that neighborhood, they cannot travel safely. Then to the right of the map, you'll see the mix of land uses that we're talking about, neighborhood boundaries, transportation corridors, and again, the flood hazard area. These are important to take a look at all these attributes and how they intersect and how our mobility and infrastructure are being impacted. Take a minute on that slide and then we'll jump into our next question. So what emergency facilities are you most concerned about access to during a flooding event? And I just wanted to further explain by emergency services, we're trying to get to the point that during these peak flood events, you know, the episodic events that may occur, what are you concerned about access to or from? What critical services are you needing that you might not be able to get to if there is an emergency? And then these emergency facilities could be law enforcement, fire, rescue, EMS, emergency management, those types of emergency facilities. So again, raise your hand if you'd like to pop off mute to answer this question. Don't see any hands. I know when we were putting this slide deck together, this was definitely like a trickier one in my head. Diane, Lauricella?
Yes, great question here. I am currently concerned about getting to a place where one could stay overnight due to flooding and a hurricane event. I really very much am concerned that having one site and not one on each side of the harbor is something that is overlooked during some of the other emergencies with snow and the like, but also with flooding. Want to make sure people that there is more than one area for people to go based upon Do they have to ford a river or a stream that's flooding or a bridge that's flooded out? So currently, if memory serves me, the main emergency shelter per se was Brian McMahon. I will say I haven't looked at the most recent emergency evacuation report, but I was just surprised that we did not have something that was easier to get to, since we've had flooding in East Norwalk, Eastern Norwalk, we've had flooding in West Norwalk, and we've also had flooding, of course, in Cranberry, Silvermine area in history. So getting to a facility closer by, using Route 7, Super 7, which is way up high, to get to a facility would be something I'm interested in. Thanks.
Okay, so emergency shelter, and also it sounds like the communication about that as well.
Right.
Thanks.
Diane Cece, if you want to unmute.
Sorry, am I unmuted now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. I just want to add a quick point here where it says the areas you're most concerned about access to. I don't know if there's another question coming up later, but there's also would be access in, obviously, I mean, I'm sure you already have this on your list, but ambulances and police cars and EMT and things like that with access coming through. I know over here in East Norwalk, underneath the railroad bridge, floods and other areas flood as well. And there's alternate routes, but I'm not sure that that's, exists in all the other flood areas too.
And you're talking about the railroad bridge at East Ave intersection?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Making sure. Yes, it is really meant to be both ways, access to and access to you, or you to it.
Right. Thank you. Anybody else want to speak on this one? Don't see any more hands, but we can, talk about stuff further. So our last focus in this plan is on natural resources. So this can include wetlands, marsh edges, and riparian buffers that provide natural flood mitigation. So on this slide, we're pulling out 3 particular areas for examples. Circle A is identifying Oyster Shell Park, located in the Upper Harbor, as I'm sure many of you know. And then this is an example of how a park can be used as a buffer to protect development and houses inland. Jump over to Circle B, Woodward Park. This is north of Village Creek neighborhood, and it provides open green space, and there's marsh to the west of that park. And these types of areas can absorb lots of water. And then just comparing north of this park, where there's a lot of impervious industrial area that cannot drain efficiently. So things like these tiny parks are what you would want in flood resilience. And then Circle C is showing how impervious areas land to high heat risk. So the connection here is heat, and the connection between heat and flooding is that there is the positive correlation. As increased temperatures go up, we're seeing increased rainfall go up. So the urban core has higher average temperatures compared to residential areas. They have more trees and open space to absorb that heat. And then to the right of this map, you can see the overlapping attributes that should be considered when analyzing natural resources and options for flood resilience. And then these include protected open space, which is essentially land that could never be developed on, wetlands, urban tree canopy. We recently did an inventory of where all the trees are located within the city. High impervious surface. This is looking at pavement and building area. And then again, the always using that flood hazard area mapping to see where those impacts will be. So on to our last question. Where would you see a park or green infrastructure? And we kind of already discussed what green infrastructure is: green roofs, rain gardens, permeable pavement, urban forests, those types of improvements. So what would be on your wish list for the city of Norwalk, and maybe where you would like to see that?
Hi, Diane CC again. First, I'll say everywhere, not being facetious. But I would also like to see, um, I don't really want to gripe about it all night, but I think the new planning and zoning regulations really aren't doing anything to help the cause. And I'm really afraid that they're contributing more to the problems that we're seeing. I'd like to see green infrastructure and open space and things that mitigate flooding and heat zones, etc. But those types of things be required in developments and not something that's then allows a perk for a developer so that they can get additional units and height if they do these things that would support these initiatives. I think that this needs to be in the code, that if you're building something, that you have to provide all the things in that toolbox that you just talked about. I also want to say that I'm one of the people that, I may be a dinosaur, but I don't see cars going away, and I don't see parking lots going away, and I don't see parking going away. I'm also one of the people that, kind of uses parking as one of the questions about, where I go actually in the city. But having said that, I think that there's been decades of um, parking lots, or private and public and commercial parking lots, where the city hasn't really, sunk their teeth into making sure that there are, islands with trees and more permeable, surfaces and better stormwater runoff. But also, again, the tree canopy is so important for these heat islands. And where something is being developed, if they're just taking the impervious surface down, a couple of percentage points, and they're doing things like a butterfly garden, we need to stop saying you can have more units and go up higher just for doing that. That I think we need to get a little stronger with this part of the initiative thing.
Thank you. Anybody else for this one? You could unmute yourself if you've already spoken. But if you have not, use the raise your hand tool at the bottom of your screen will bring you over. Diane Lauricella, go ahead.
Okay, I didn't know how to use that. Interesting feature. Okay, well, of course, I could go on for hours about different places to put infrastructure improvements, but I will just put forth the following. I would like to see green infrastructure improvements in every public parking lot, especially in the schools, as one by one, prioritizing with those, for instance, school parking lots made of asphalt that are closest to known flooding areas, and ensure that we have green infrastructure that is not necessarily the most expensive, fancy one, but things that work, like I've seen in Westport and Newtown in the parking lots, where instead of using traditional islands that are impervious to rain runoff, that we have them to accept water and that be built in one by one, see improvements, especially if they're close to the 5 Mile River or any of the streams near the Norwalk River. I know that the Calf Pasture Beach and then a teeny tiny speck at the Webster lot have what I would call that are green infrastructure, but they are mostly, I think, so small amounts that their impact is not necessarily what it could be. Also, I feel that the Calf Pasture Beach parking lot, even though we do have some green infrastructure, could go a lot farther in making sure we have natural vegetated edges of that park to, at the very least, make sure that it catches the water, it cools the water off, it cleanses the water somewhat as runoff, because that most of that parking are large and small parking lots in public places are currently, the old-fashioned asphalt. So I would say I believe government should lead by example, and it would be great to literally get a grant or make sure that there's unanimity with the DPW and the operations division and others to make sure that one hand knows what the other hand is doing. And I'm sure the staff has tried to do that, but I just haven't seen enough of it. And as far as parks, well, I put this out to Mr. Stowers. There's currently a city-owned property that is being rented to Optimum for their large cable spools. And that was started when Frank Esposito was the mayor in order to get some money for the city, which is fine. But since that time, we've had more apartment buildings and homeowners, households near that park. And I would like to see the city stop renting that to Optimum. I brought this up to Tom Hamilton. I'm sorry, Tom Livingston, when the current lease was up for renewal or not. And I told Mr. Stowers about it. It is a beautiful place for a park right next to the Norwalk River. And I do think because the geography and demography has changed a lot, that people would love a park like that. And hopefully there would be educational plaques so people know about flooding and what that does. In fact, that area was underwater during the 1955 flood. So I think there's a lot of connection with the schools. But mainly I'd like to see that rental as asphalt parcel, and it's not a small parcel, be turned back into a city park. And that's
You're
just
talking about the parcel on Cross Street, right?
yes,
Yep.
yes. Yeah, and I think everyone would rally and support it, and I think it's very fundable with either corporate donation or whatever grants we can get. I know that's very difficult nowadays, but the state of Connecticut still has, I think, their watershed related open space. But first, it would take seeing when the next renewal of this parking lot is. And I do believe Optimum could find someplace else to put their heavy equipment. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you. I don't see any other hands for this one, so we can continue.
All right. So this is section 3 of the agenda and what this means for Norwalk. So I just want to take a minute and say thank you all for attending tonight and for sharing your observations and thoughts. It is really appreciated. AECOM has already observed some key patterns, or as shown in this graphic. Things like, they already know that not all neighborhoods experience flooding the same way, and that properties are vulnerable to flooding, but so is access and infrastructure. We're fortunate that many of our public parks overlap with flood areas, and the flood risks aren't just limited to the shoreline. We have other areas of flooding, whether it's riverine or that that urban drainage that was brought up earlier, and that there's kind of a relationship between heat impacts that are built up in extreme are most extreme in these in the downtown areas where we lack natural resources. So that's kind of where they have started, and the Norwalk specific information that you have started to share with us tonight will assist them in some additional refinement of the places that they will study and the types of flooding situations that most impact Norwalk. And so, as I mentioned at the beginning earlier, this is a three-phase project, and AECOM is going to use tonight's information to identify a list of opportunities to support increased flood resilience. And AECOM will be coming to Norwalk for a in-person public workshop on Monday, April 20th. And that will be phase two by the end of April. The consultant will be continuing to gather information, but at that point, we expect them to have some initial ideas on strategies that would work well for Norwalk. And during that public workshop, we'd want your feedback on those initial strategies, as well as an opportunity for further input. So then we really hope that you are all able to join us in April. It will be, I'll go back, it is at the new South Norwalk School on Meadow Street, and we'll have additional information about that in-person workshop as it gets closer. And then lastly, I just want to recognize that there are people out there that probably want to relay their own Norwalk specific information about flooding, but weren't able to come tonight. So recognizing that not everyone can make it to the listening session, we are launching an online survey that will start tonight. This is the QR code that will take you to it, and then the survey link is below, and we'll be pushing out more information about this. I ask that you all please consider filling out the survey. It is designed to be as quick or as detailed as you want it. There's multiple choice questions. There's opportunities to note locations on maps, but there's also prompts that allow you to add more extended responses. And you can also respond to the survey multiple times if you want. So utilizing the survey is the most effective way to record your thoughts and observations rather. And it's organized in the same three buckets that we saw on the slides tonight. You'll see those three sections repeated in the survey. So please fill it out. Like I said, it is the written data that AECOM will use to inform the direction and the content of the plan. And thank you, Michelle. Added to the chat, the link to the survey is in the chat. And we've also added both of our email addresses. If anyone wants to reach out to either of us directly, I recommend doing it both of us. You're more than welcome to send us additional information that you think should be considered in the plan. And at this point, we will see if we can allow anyone that wants to speak. If there's anything that you want to add that didn't fit into the context of those three questions under agenda item 2, you can speak now if you like, because we are here to take your comments. And then after that, we are done. So if anyone has anything additional, you're more than welcome to unmute yourself or use the raise your hand feature again. Otherwise, we will, like I said, we're looking forward to receiving the data that will come from use of the survey, and look forward to seeing everyone in about 1 month.
And Alexis, I'm not sure if you touched on, the survey runs through the end of March.
Yes.
Okay. So people have some time to fill it out. No mad rush tonight.
Right. Yeah, it's not for input just tonight. Thank you, Michelle. We want to give
Alexis, you're going to post that. Will that be posted on the city website, did you say? The link for
It will be. We will email it out, and then we are working on a project landing page for this now. But it will be it'll be sent out on the city's social media, and it will, though not tonight, be on the city's webpage.
Thank you.
Yeah, we'll try and get it as many places as we can, and feel free to pass it along and share it through your groups.
Thank you, guys.
Okay.
All right.
Thank
I
you
don't
to
see.
everyone for coming.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone.
Have a great night.
Bye-bye.